Tonight on Bridge City News, another case of the novel coronavirus has been confirmed in Canada, this one in British Columbia. The City of Lethbridge and our city's 2 school divisions now have a new busing contract. And Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf stopped by our studio and talked about how the province will help Lethbridge deal with its crime issues.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Robbins.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Lethbridge police are investigating a report of a threat at Lethbridge College. The staff and students of the college were evacuated as a precautionary measure. School officials say that classes had been canceled. We'll have more for you as the story develops. Watch for updates on our social media pages, including Facebook and on Twitter. Health officials in British Columbia say the first case of the novel coronavirus has now been found in their province. They say a man in his 40s who regularly travels to China tested positive for the virus. He's recovering at home in Vancouver in isolation. That, along with 2 cases in Toronto, means we now have at least 3 cases of the virus in Canada. Federal Health Minister Patty Hajdu says there's still no reason for Canadians to be alarmed. Hajdu says government agencies are ready to respond if the situation worsens.
I'm reluctant to go into numbers of cases that are being monitored, as that could be very fluid and can change from moment to moment. But I will tell you that the provinces and territories are reporting cases that they're monitoring immediately to their federal counterparts, which allows us to support them in contact tracing, in testing, and analysis at the national lab. The risk is low. I think that is the primary message that I want to give Canadians. The risk of contracting coronavirus is low. And I think there are risks of contracting other viruses that are here in Canada that we know a lot about that are much higher. The fact that there are cases that are being actively monitored is a good sign. It means that our public health officials, our health officials at all levels of government, including the municipal level, are taking their responsibility seriously, have the information that they need in order to act on potential cases, and are taking appropriate measures to make sure that we do the tests to ensure that we understand what the spread of the disease is like in Canada.
Due to the risk of transmission of the coronavirus by those who've recently arrived from China, the Southern Alberta Chinese Association canceled its gala celebration planned for this Saturday at the Coast Hotel in Lethbridge. Ticket holders for the gala are urged to contact SACA for a full refund. China is now counting 2,700 cases of the coronavirus, including more than 80 deaths. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari says the reason why the disease is spreading so quickly to so many countries is because of air travel.
People have already traveled out of Wuhan, the Chinese province where this began, and it's going to take a while before this can be contained. Again, where we spoke about this last time, you and Hal, about how whenever there's an when airplanes are available, diseases will spread, and they will spread quickly to different continents.
Lisa will have an update on the coronavirus coming up later in our show. A professor at Northwestern University is one of the scientists racing to stop a new and deadly coronavirus. Carla Satchel is working with a team investigating the structure of the virus and to stop it from replicating in human cells.
What makes coronavirus a particular challenge is that, like all viruses, it has a capacity to change. And so, as what we know about related viruses, such as SARS, doesn't always tell us exactly how to treat or prevent illnesses in people who might contract this particular coronavirus. You just have many unknowns. And we don't know how fast this is going to spread, and we don't know how infectious is going to be if it were to spread worldwide. And so it's important for us to generate scientific information as fast as possible to determine if what we know from having studied SARS will apply to this new coronavirus. The machinery that makes up the viral particles has many different functions. And so a great example would be if you were a factory, you might have many different kinds of machines that would be used to produce, for example, a car. And if you can block those machines from functioning, you could block a car from being assembled. A virus works the same way, and it has to actually make many different components of that virus before that virus is fully intact.
The City of Lethbridge will not be conducting a 2020 census. That decision was voted on unanimously by City Council yesterday.
What the provincial government has announced is that they're going to use the federal census, and they will make some form of an adjustment. So Our city clerk advised us that there will be a consultation process, but it's going to be important for the city of Lethbridge. The last federal census was conducted in 2016, so 4 years ago. We can safely say that the city of Lethbridge has grown by 8,000 people since 2016, and it's important that federal funding for transportation, what we refer to as gas tax money, and federal and provincial money for infrastructure keep up with the growth of a city like Lethbridge.
The city has conducted a census almost every year since 1954. The Lethbridge Public and Holy Spirit School Divisions have now until January 31st of next year to figure out a new student busing agreement. A new one-year contract for the busing transition was approved by Council late yesterday.
We would start with a feasibility study. We need to transfer employees. We need to not transfer employees, we need to get employees. We need to apply to the government to be a transportation provider. We need to move, we have a lot of buses that we need to determine ownership for. There's many things that we have to do in order to move forward, and it just couldn't be done before June.
We keep our joint use agreements. We've worked together, as they said, for 60 years, and here we are hoping for another 60. As the school boards, we keep, I think, first and foremost, the children. And the transition, and as Clark again mentioned, it's a long process to take over this transportation for a variety of reasons, but we look forward to working together and do the best we can with what we've got.
Bosch says the one-year deal will allow for the best possible solutions for parents, students, and employees. Hundreds of grade 5 and 6 students from across the Lethbridge School District got to skate with and meet members of the Lethbridge Hurricanes today at the NMAC Centre. The event, organized every year by the Alberta Motor Association, is a way to thank the kids for their hard work as public school safety patrollers.
My favorite part was skating around and getting signatures and hanging out with a whole bunch of buddies.
It's pretty fun, just going out there getting signatures with the guys.
We're here basically to show our appreciation to all the people that participate with the AMA Safety Patrol. It's a great opportunity to show our appreciation to them and to kind of give back to them because they put the effort out to keep our streets safe, and it's a good way for us to say thanks.
To keep kids safe crossing the street.
Today we're out to celebrate the school safety patrollers. It's a day for the community to come together to celebrate the hard work that these patrollers are doing every day. The patrollers are out there whether it's raining, whether it's snowing, whether it's nice hot sunny day, they're out there patrolling, making sure that kids are getting to and from school safely every day, and these kids are out there doing a great job.
Having a good time, skate with the Hurricanes and meeting all of the actual players.
I'm having a good time, like getting all their autographs and like skating around with all my friends. I'm having a good time, just seeing friends, hockey teammates, and seeing the Hurricanes from my teams. It's awesome here.
It's fantastic. All these kids out here, they're smiling, they're having fun, they're skating, learning to skate. It's great to be out with them.
The program is in its 83rd year. There are recent reports that a new international crime wave has made its way to Canada, and this one has roots in South America. Police say crime tourism is becoming more prominent in cities across the country. Police say these perpetrators come from Chile and that they do not need a visa to enter Canada as a tourist. In Revelstoke, BC, RCMP arrested 3 Chileans who were in possession of thousands of dollars in stolen jewelry and cash. In Montreal, 6 Chileans were arrested by police. They were part of a gang police say stole more than $210,000 in cash and jewelry. And last October, York Regional Police in Toronto arrested another 3 Chileans and laid more than 60 charges. Police say foreign burglars parachute into a community and target different neighborhoods. After they have burgled a home, the thieves either pawn the stolen goods or mail them back to Chile. Last year, $2.7 million worth of stolen goods were recovered in the Toronto area. The 14 Chileans were convicted and deported back to Chile. So what is the best way to protect your home from being invaded by a prowler? We spoke with a local home security firm about what you can do to ensure that you're not becoming a victim of crime.
It's not just your alarm system for your home. Now they've integrated having cameras, having doorbell cameras, having security locks, having automated garage systems, all linked directly to your smartphone so you can control it from literally anywhere in the world and keep tabs on what's going on in your home. As soon as the alarm goes off, you're getting a notification. If you're not answering, there's always a backup contact list, people that you trust that they would call. They always try to verify it before they notify the police.
According to Stats Canada, police reported crime per 100,000 has gone up 2.1% over the past year to 5,488 incidents. Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman has been complaining for a full-time SCAN unit for our city for quite some time. SCAN, which stands for Safer Communities and Neighborhoods, is used by Alberta sheriffs to shut down drug houses. Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf says even with provincial cutbacks, Lethbridge may still see a full-time SCAN unit.
We have limited resources right now, so there's some fiscal realities to that, but I don't think the SCAN unit issue is dead. I have had ongoing conversations. We're working with the Minister of Justice right now. He's coming down to meet with us again, and I think the city has put forward some proposals that will help on that funding side. I think if we're creative and don't get trapped in a box of thinking, that we may see a SCAN unit down here yet.
Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf will have more on what funding could be coming to Lethbridge, including what help may be available to deal with drug addiction. That's coming up after business news. Back in January of last year, the brakes on a 99-car CP Rail grain train failed and the train began rolling on its own. The train eventually crashed. 3 CP Rail employees all died that day. Engineer Andrew Dockrell, conductor Dylan Parody, and trainee Daniel Bulmer. Now, according to the Alberta Federation of Labour, the deaths of those 3 men has still not been fully investigated by an independent body. The AFL is demanding a criminal investigation into CP Rail be undertaken immediately under the Westray Act of the Canadian Criminal Code. Gil McGowan, president of AFL, said in a release that employers have a duty to ensure work is safe for workers and the public. And if an employer is negligent in their duty and kill a worker, they deserve to go to jail. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau needs to work quickly to approve the Tech Frontier mine north of Fort McMurray or confirm the government is planning to phase out the oil sands. Kenney says there's no reason to delay the $20.6 billion deal near Wood Buffalo National Park. He says if it is all about reconciliation, then Ottawa should say yes to economic development for First Nations people. The province, through the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation, will provide communities with up to $250 million to invest in major resource projects.
Their current deadline is the end of February for a decision on that. And I've been very clear to the Prime Minister. If they say no to this project, then they are signaling his earlier statement that he wants to phase out the oil sands. I'm confident that the federal government will respond to some of our demands for fairness, and we will hold their feet to the fire. Responding to First Nations and Indigenous Canadians doesn't simply mean saying no when there is some opposition. It means saying yes to projects and prosperity when there is broad Indigenous support.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says our country's premiers and business leaders want the new NAFTA deal or the USMCA ratified quickly. The government will introduce the first 2 bills to finalize the Continental Trade Pact.
We recognize that this is an important issue for the Canadian economy. There's thousands and millions of workers across the country who rely on NAFTA, on secure access to the United States. We heard the premiers loudly and clearly saying they wanted ratification quickly. We've heard from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Yes, we're going to have debate and study in the House of Commons, but we're also going to focus on ratifying it.
Conservative leader Andrew Scheer attacked Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's pledge to enact stricter gun control during the first question period of 2020 yesterday. He calls the Liberals' plan lazy because it makes law-abiding gun owners follow more rules instead of tackling gun violence.
Mr. Speaker, in our cities across this country, gang crime committed with firearms is a serious concern. Yet the Prime Minister's only approach is the lazy approach of asking people who are already following all the rules to follow a few more rules. It's much harder to track down illegal guns. It's much harder to stop the flow of smuggled firearms, and it's much more difficult to infiltrate gangs and hold them accountable. But that is the difficult work that Conservatives are prepared to do.
Far too many families in this country, far too many communities in this country suffer the devastation of gun violence. We have taken many initiatives to counter that, whether it's enhanced background checks or requiring sellers to check licenses of anyone who wants to buy a gun. We've invested over $327 million to address the gun and gang violence. We will continue to strengthen our gun laws by banning dangerous assault weapons and working with provinces, territories, and mayors to keep communities safe. But the bottom line is, Mr. Speaker, we will strengthen gun control. Conservatives want to weaken it.
Baseball coach John Altobelli, his wife and daughter, were among those who died when a helicopter crashed in California on Sunday. The crash also claimed the lives of former LA Laker Kobe Bryant and his daughter. University of Houston head baseball coach reflects on memories of Coach Altobelli.
Yeah, actually, John was a really good friend of mine, of my entire family. You know, I've known him probably 25 years. He's, you know, a very successful coach at Orange Coast College. We've had 5 of his players here. Obviously, a letterman at the University of Houston, assistant coach here at one time. But we, you know, every time I'm on the West Coast recruiting or we're playing out on the West Coast, John and I always get together and usually carrying the girls and JJ when he's around. But it's just, you know, a really sad day for the program. You know, me personally, obviously, but you know, college baseball in general lost a great one yesterday.
A witness who saw the helicopter crash said there was no big explosion, just a loud thud and then silence.
20 seconds later, we heard, it was not a big explosion, it was just a big thud. Just a big, heavy thud like you're throwing a boulder against the wall. And I heard the fuselage break up, pieces, fiberglass and plexiglass break, and the rotors immediately went silent. So within a half a second, quarter or half a second. I didn't see the fire or the smoke. My heart sank and I just thought to myself, oh my God, what happened just didn't, but it did happen. So immediately pulled out my phone, called 911. What's the nature of your emergency? I said, I'm sorry to report, but I think a helicopter's just gone down.
Officials with the coroner's office in Los Angeles say they're working to recover the 9 bodies from the helicopter crash.
There is a impact area on one of the hills, and a piece of the tail is down the hill on the left side of the hill. The fuselage is over on the other side of that hill, and then the main rotor is about 100 yards beyond that.
We're still waiting on the coroner to do their job to make the identifications. They're busy recovering the remains as we speak. It's a very difficult task. It's going to take a while, so be patient.
Lucas Fiorella was a typical teenager. He had good marks in school, lots of friends, and always had a big smile. But he suffered in silence. Lucas dealt with depression and eventually took his own life. Now his father Sam is on a mission to keep his son's spirit alive by inviting people to come and sit and talk on a special bench.
What we wanted to do was, in his spirit, create a campaign that would encourage more students to say hello to each other and have those positive conversations about mental health, in hopes that they will then have the courage and the strength to go and ask for the help that is available to them in college campuses and in communities and through professionals across the country. After we have been on a school campus for 6 months or longer, they've seen an increase of somewhere between 18 and 20% in the number of kids asking for help from the professionals. So we know that this works and that this concept of peer-to-peer conversation, as opposed to lectures, more mental health lectures from clinicians and faculty members and parents, really does seem to work. Lucas lives on now for us in every hello that is said, not just on this bench, but as part of this campaign around college campuses, university campuses, high schools, where students are making it okay for other students to not be okay.
Fiorella encourages people to look beyond the smile. Common signs of depression include a loss of passion, a change in sleeping patterns, and withdrawing from close friends and family members. The weather's been putting a bit of a smile on our faces lately. We had lots of sunshine again today, but slightly cooler. But we should be getting up to double-digit temperatures by the weekend. Full weather details are coming up. We had sun mixed with cloud and a little bit cooler today. The mercury will be climbing even more later this week. Jeanette Roche is here now with a complete look at the weather picture.
Yeah, well, that temperature will be climbing before it sinks again. So let's enjoy it while we can. The high today was 5 degrees. The low overnight tonight, -5. It's going to feel like -12 though with the wind chill. Wind will be coming from the southwest, 40 gusting to 60 at times. Into tomorrow, we're going to see mainly sunny skies there with a high of 8 degrees. Not too bad. Looking ahead to the 5-day forecast, lots of sunshine expected for Thursday with a high of 8 as well. And then we are going to climb into the double digit there, 10 degrees on Friday with increasing cloud. We are going to be seeing a 30% chance of showers though on Saturday. and a high of 13 degrees. And then the temperature is going to drop. We're going to be seeing 60% chance of flurries on both Monday and Sunday. So high for Sunday, 1 degree, and then we're going to drop. The mercury is going to drop to -7 on Monday. So quite a difference from what we've been having this week anyways. The average highs and lows for this time of year, -1 is the high, -13 the low, and we're still definitely staying in that range there, sometimes even above. The highest temperature recorded on this day was in 1988. It was 14 degrees. And the coldest day was in 1969. It was -38. The sun rose this morning at 8:10 a.m. and it set at 5:18 p.m. Okay, so let's take a look at the highs for tomorrow across the country. Victoria's high tomorrow, 10 degrees. They're going to be having some periods of rain. Rain expected in Vancouver, sometimes heavy rains even. High of 9 degrees, high of 2 expected tomorrow in Edmonton, and 5 expected in Calgary. Looking at the rest of the prairies there, mainly sunny over in Saskatoon. -5 is the high, -3 in Regina. And there are going to be seeing some periods of snow tomorrow in Winnipeg with a high of -7. Looking further to the east, Toronto's high tomorrow, -1, and then mainly sunny conditions across this region tomorrow. Ottawa's high, -6, and Montreal will be expecting a -5 as their high tomorrow. Looking further even more so to the east, Atlantic Canada, we're going to be seeing lots of sunshine in Fredericton. -5 is the high. And then a 30% chance of flurries tomorrow in Halifax. -4 is their high. 60% chance of flurries in Charlottetown is expected with a high of 7 degrees. And St. John's should be seeing some snow as well with a high of -1. There you go. That's your forecast.
2 professors at the University of Lethbridge have created an interactive website that will provide Alberta farmers and ranchers with information on climate extremes. Stefan Keinzel and Christine Clark want to inform Albertans what's going on in their own backyard and how weather patterns have changed. The site, albertaclimaterecords.com, includes future climate projections and 55 climate variables such as number of frost days, length of growing season, and rainfall extremes. Keinzel says Alberta is seeing more extreme weather. He adds there is good news for growers since the growing season is longer, creating more flexibility in seeding and harvesting. A Stats Canada study says of more than 10,000 Canadian boards, nearly 62% had no female members in 2016 and 2017. The agency says the percentage of boards with one female director increased just over 1% to 27.7% from 2016 to 2017. But the percentage dropped almost 1% when there was more than one female board member, from 11.7% to 11.1%. The Parliamentary Budget Watchdog estimates Canadians will save an average of $218 per year once the Liberal government's tax cut is fully implemented. The income tax cut came into effect on January 1st, but will be phased in over 4 years. The report says families will save an average of $364 annually by the year 2023. It does warn, however, the tax break will result in around $21.5 billion in lost revenues through March of 2024. That is around $2.5 billion higher than the Finance Department reported last month. Britain is allowing Huawei limited participation in its new high-speed mobile network. The Chinese company will be allowed to build aspects of the network, but will be excluded from core parts. The move could have critical implications for Britain's relationship with the United States, which has been pushing to ban the Chinese company because of worries about cyber espionage. The decision to keep Huawei out of its core 5G wireless network is similar to the approach Canada took with its 4G and 3G networks. The Trudeau government has yet to make a decision on whether Huawei should be allowed to supply 5G equipment. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 58 points on the day to 17,500. The Dow was up 187 points to 28,722. The S&P 500 was up almost 33 points to 3276. The Nasdaq was up 130 points to 9269. Oil was up 84 cents on the day to 53.98 per barrel. Natural gas was up 3 cents to $1.93. Gold was down a cent to $15.67.15 per ounce, and silver was down 2 cents to $17.46 an ounce. Wheat is at $232 per metric ton, barley's at $237, canola's at $4.79, and corn is at $278 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 10 cents to $123.10. Feeder cattle were up 15 cents to $142.40. Lean hogs were up 28 cents to $67.05. And the Canadian dollar was down slightly on the day to $75.99 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Lethbridge police are investigating a threat at Lethbridge College. The college was evacuated. All of the staff and students and classes were cancelled.
Shortly before 1 o'clock today, the Lethbridge College received an email to their general inquiries of a bomb threat potentially to take place tomorrow. The college took some precautions as per their security policies, and police responded. Through our investigation, we determined that potentially the email actually has come from overseas, and there's no credible threat at all that there's a bomb in the college. Because there's no credible threat and no information or intelligence that would drive us in a particular direction, there's no more we can do other than conduct an investigation really in terms of a cyber crime now.
As the police officer said earlier on, Inspector Doverstein, it was a bomb threat. We immediately called 911 and entered into our protocol in terms of which the executive team met and considered the threat and it made the decision to evacuate the college.
The new Alberta budget said there will be cutbacks, but in what areas and how will that impact Lethbridge? Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf stops by our studio to give us an update. That interview is on deck. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News Community Calendar. Ready to take the plunge? Southern Albertans are invited to take part in this year's Polar Plunge in support of Special Olympics, taking place Saturday, February 1st at Henderson Lake Park from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Every dollar raised goes towards more than 3,300 Special Olympic athletes representing 140 communities across Alberta. Registration is $50 and comes with a pair of Polar Plunge gloves. For more details and to register, visit specialolympics.ca/Alberta Polar Plunge. Night to Shine is an event sponsored by the Tim Tebow Foundation and hosted by My Victory Lethbridge on Friday, February 7th. Night to Shine is an unforgettable prom night experience for people with special needs, ages 14 and older. This complimentary event begins on a red carpet with guests receiving the royal treatment, including hair and makeup stations, limousine rides, a catered dinner, and much more. For details and to register, visit myvictory.ca. And if you'd like to volunteer, email carol@myvictory.ca. The Lethbridge Association of the Blind provides numerous activities for the blind and visually impaired in the Lethbridge area. These events include dinners with entertainment, theatrical performances, local museum tours, bowling, and much more. For more information or to volunteer, call 403-942-1677 or email brownwj@shaw.ca. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
The water cooler chatter on many offices is the fact that the UCP may be shutting down or relocating our province's supervised consumption and injection sites. To discuss what that may actually look like is Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf. Welcome back to BCN.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
So Premier Kenney has said, he wants to shut them down, maybe move them because there's been increased crime around the neighborhoods. Business owners are not happy about it. Antisocial behavior. Some people are celebrating that. They're applauding it, saying, yes, finally. And other people are saying, that's going to throw our city into chaos. That's a terrible idea. What are you hearing?
Well, I think this was all set out last August when they set up the review panel to go around the province and talk to people and really delve into this whole question. And they have done the work. That report was submitted by the end of the year. The Premier and Cabinet are discussing it right now. I think we're going to have a lot of information and a clear direction where we're going to go. And I'm very happy that he's taken the leadership very strongly to head towards treatment and recovery. That's the ultimate goal, is we want these people to get well. We've been stuck in a hamster wheel for a long time. We've seen some of the negative effects, and we're caught there. So I'm really excited that we're finally starting to see movement.
What are you hearing from your constituents regarding this, the SCS?
Again, a lot of support that something is being addressed. We understand that harm reduction is part of the equation, but obviously it's not the total part. And the ultimate goal is to get people well, get people back to their families, get people back to a productive life. Most of those individuals want that as well. So we need to be enabling them to get that treatment they need to get onto that wellness path.
What about the people that have not hit rock bottom and say, you know what, I don't have a problem with this, it's fine, IOD, naloxone, I'm brought back, it's all good, I love the ride.
Well, again, as society, that's not where we want people to be stuck. We understand that they have a path to take, and not everybody is going to be able to pull themselves up. So we do have to have compassion and have to have those avenues to reach them for counseling as well. Again, it's enabling quite a number of other initiatives beyond just the consumption site.
How about potentially relocating the SCS instead of shutting it down entirely? where would that look like? Where would you actually set it up? In Lethbridge?
That's a discussion that I have not been privy to. There's opinions, as you would imagine, all over the spectrum on that. Outside the city, we need it downtown so it's accessible. One is I want to see the plan fully take shape from the cabinet minister and the premier first, and then we'd be able to comment on that more fully.
Now, when I spoke with Mayor Chris Spearman here, he says we need the money from the province for the proper intox and detox beds to really address the drug crisis in our city. How's that coming? Are we going to see any more funds?
I believe that there is that will be part of the budget on where we go with that, but that's at the beginning, right? That's the beginning part of that whole cycle. But where I think we'll see the greatest change again is on that treatment and recovery, on getting people on the pathway to wellness and back to a life that's profitable and good for them and good for their families.
Premier Kenney also mentioned the fact that we have to work with the federal government to stop China from sending this huge influx of opioids into our big cities and the smaller cities like Lethbridge.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, that whole justice component is a big part of this, and taking control of our borders, taking control of our province and understanding what's coming in and giving the resources needed to our law enforcement officers. They're doing a tremendous job trying to handle a huge volume of supply. So that's got to be a collaborative effort, not just from the city and the province, but also from the federal government.
And what about the strain as well on our law enforcement?
Absolutely. Those men and women have seen it for a long time. They're being taxed, and our first responders and our emergency departments, they're really seeing the impact of this. So it's got to be a combined effort to move beyond this hamster wheel that we're stuck in. We've got to get people on a journey where they can get out of this, where the demand isn't there for the supply of these illegal drugs.
When I was speaking with Mayor Chris Spearman, he was also somewhat disappointed the fact we're not getting a full-time scan unit to shut down these drug houses here in Lethbridge. Close to 100 drug houses. One shuts down, another one opens up a few houses down the block. Why wouldn't provincial funding come in so we have the same services as Calgary, Edmonton?
I think that's a funding question for the province overall, where we have limited resources right now. So there's some fiscal realities to that, but I don't think the scan unit issue is dead. I have had ongoing conversations. We're working with the Minister of Justice right now. He's coming down to meet with us again, and I think the city has put forward some proposals that will help on that funding side. I think if we're creative and don't get trapped in a box of thinking, that we may see a scan unit down here yet. And we know that again, that's support for our law enforcement agencies to be able to help them do their job.
Rural crime is also a big issue as well, Nathan. Yeah. You know, a lot of our farmers, they're talking about, you know, they want to protect themselves and their families. They have their rifles, their guns. By the time that the police arrive, a lot of times the RCMP, the perpetrators are gone. They've done their damage, they've stolen, they've hurt their families. What is the province doing to protect our farmers and ranchers?
Well, we've strengthened property rights for farmers and those in rural areas, so that they are protected. They're not going to be victimized and then sued when they try to protect themselves. We've made those changes already. We are strengthening that. We are putting more funding for those police officers. But again, this is more than just the province. We need some help from the federal government. So many of these areas are policed by the RCMP, so that's a collaborative approach. And a lot of these jurisdictions don't have enough officers to fulfill their current complement. So this is an area that we are constantly working on. The Minister of Justice has spent a lot of time with his federal counterpart to continue to enhance the need for that, to allow the training to carry on, and to make sure that the funding is there to hire these officers when they're ready and out of school.
There's also real need here in Lethbridge for people to be able to use the buses. And the low income transit program from the province, the money just wasn't there. Yeah. Are you receiving any flack from your constituents about that?
Yeah, we are, and we've addressed that with different ministers in the capital. This one comes back to the overall fiscal picture. Unfortunately, we've had a number of years with deficits climbing, the debt climbing to above $63 billion. And unfortunately, we can't take on some of these programs that really do help people. We are trying to find nickels and dimes everywhere we can. Just holding funding on things like education is hard enough. Can you imagine if we had to try to cut that? Or healthcare spending, trying to cut that. We don't have those options. We are just trying to maintain that. but that really limits what new programs we can bring online. So this is the fiscal mess that is now spilling over and affecting lots of other people. We would love to help them, and I advocated hard in Edmonton to get that program included for Lethbridge. And again, it was a fiscal reality that we just couldn't do it at the time. It's something that's still there, it's something we'll talk about, but the fiscal reality is spilling over into other areas now.
Healthcare is a big contentious issue as well. We had the AUP protesting in Claresholm, at the Chinook Regional Hospital as well. How can you ensure that healthcare will not impact, the cuts will not impact myself and my family?
Yeah, this is a big issue for sure, and we are taking it seriously. So the first part of that was a 0% increase on the wages, so that has been gone through at this point. Now we're getting into the real nitty-gritty, the complicated part, where throughout the system there are efficiencies to be gained, and it's whether it's shift differential or overtime pay or sick day. These are tough negotiations. These are things that can add up to millions and millions of dollars for what time of the week or what time of the year a person works. That's important. There has to be incentive for people to work night shift or evenings or weekends or holidays. There's got to be that. So these are tough negotiations. But we know that we have to save dollars wherever we can because the demand is continuing to increase. Like I said before, the fiscal realities, if we don't get this in control, we're already seeing it impact other areas, and we don't want that to grow. So we have to right the fiscal ship. We have to be responsible with every dollar. These are hard negotiations. These are people's lives and livelihoods. We understand that. My wife is a nurse. I highly respect doctors and nurses and the AUPE workers. This is not about cutting jobs. This is about trying to regain fiscal control where we can have a system that is not only there for today, for your family and for you and for seniors, but it's there tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And if we don't have that in order, we'll be forced to make cuts that are devastating, which we do not want to do. So that's why it's so hard, why we want to have these difficult conversations and work with AUPE and other unions to hammer out the best way forward. This is not easy, but somebody has to do it.
The city of Lethbridge has hired a consulting firm to really go to bat for them, the province, when it comes to more money that's necessary here in the city. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, from my understanding, speaking with the mayor, that it's a consultant to help them with their messaging. They're not a lobbyist group. They are not trying to replace MLAs. And they're not saying that, as far as I'm concerned, that they're not doing the job that myself and the MLA for Lethbridge West are doing. We're there. We are advocating. I take that the role very, very seriously. I am not a lobbyist. I am a representative. So whether people agree with me or the UCP government or platform, they can come and talk to me. And I've had lots of people in my office where I meet with them one-on-one, and I take those concerns seriously and take them to the appropriate ministry to get answers. And I will continue to do that, working tirelessly. Some of that's in the public and some of that's private behind closed doors. But I will continue to do that. If the city wants to work on their messaging with a consultant to make sure that they're aligning themselves with the principles and platforms that this current UCP government has put forward, lots of municipalities do that. And I think that shows a cooperative nature with the municipality to work with the province to achieve the same goals: fiscal responsibility and sustainability, and still supplying the services that they need. And I think that's a clear distinction that needs to be made.
Tell me about this new funding model for post-secondary institutions here and education, which will be outcomes-based in nature. How does that actually work?
I think some of that is still being worked through, and we'll see the outcome of that. Obviously, the matrix for deciding what those requirements for universities will be are very, very important, because a different matrix can skew that number, and the system could be gamed. So we've talked about that in caucus, and I know the minister is talking about that with institutions. I think there's a lot of good that can come from a bit of competitive nature. People don't go to Harvard because it's cheap. They go there because they're almost guaranteed a job, and a good paying job at that. The University of Lethbridge, the Lethbridge College, those two institutions have stellar reputations in their fields and what they teach, and we want to advance that and strengthen that. So it's the emphasis is on the training that you get, not the investment that you have to make to get into there. So I think that's the focus that we really want to put on that.
The Canadian Federation of Independent Business recently came out with its report card for Alberta. Went from an F to a B-. Is this thanks to a lot of the red tape reduction?
I absolutely believe that it is. Coming from a small business background, the hoops that you have to jump through for government regulations and things you do put tremendous stress and time on particularly small business owners where they have staff of less than 10 or 6. That's normally the business owner at night, in the evenings, on weekends, going through books, going through regulations, making sure they're filling out the paperwork that's required. So to relieve that burden makes that person more profitable, allows them to reinvest in their business and hire another person. So that a lot of that effort to eliminate that burden on them, it will have positive impacts in the economy down the road.
How are we helping our farmers here, agriculture?
That's another one. Yeah, that's another one that we're really having to work on. It's access to market. As you are very well aware, right now we are in a global market, and there's global currents from all over the place. We need, again, our Minister of Agriculture has spent a lot of time with his federal counterpart,
Devin Dreeshen, yeah.
Devin Dreeshen, working on access to global markets, whether it's China, where we're caught in a trade war between the US and China, whether it's India, a huge population base that can use our resources, whether it's Italy for some of our grain crops, or North Africa, there's continents there we compete against, or whether there's impacts in the market from Australia and the droughts and fire that they've had. These are markets that we have to access and make sure that we are getting our product to them. And that's what's going to really help, particularly the South. We have some of the best agriculture crop growers in the world, and our fruit processing market is really growing as well. So those are areas where I spend a lot of time in Edmonton advocating on behalf of our producers to do better and get more access.
What about the oil and gas industry? Some people I talk to in the energy sector say, you know what, it's been great lip service from Kenny, but I haven't seen anything yet.
Well, there's been legislation, some of that will take time to get the investment back. That's a double-edged sword. We can do a lot of things in Alberta, but without support from the federal government, there's a lot of investors that are still gun shy, because who has the ultimate say? And that is why we've been fighting so hard to say our place in Confederation matters. Our voice in Alberta matters. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't matter what we do. So we are working very, very hard on that. And the primary thing that our goal is get those companies back on their feet. If they're struggling financially, as we've seen from the AUMA and the RMA, they won't pay their taxes. They don't pay their bills.
I was just going to say, a lot of those oil and gas companies saying, I'm not going to pay those taxes.
Exactly.
I'm struggling. So
that's,
you write that off.
That's devastating. That's devastating for everybody. So what's step one? What's purpose one? Getting them back on their feet. A profitable company is paying its taxes. A profitable company is hiring workers. But if they can't be profitable because they're stuck in red tape, or if they're stuck in federal regulation, or they can't get their product to market, those steps have to go away so that they can become profitable again. When they're profitable, all those other things fall into line. So that's where we're really focused on that economic market, on getting the story straight with the Canadian Energy Centre. Those are things that we are focused on.
Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf, thanks for stopping by studio today.
Thank you very much, Al. Appreciate the time.
Many sports fans from around the world are still in mourning following the tragic helicopter crash in California, which claimed the lives of former NBA All-Star Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter Gigi, also 56-year-old baseball coach John Altobelli, his wife Carrie, and their daughter Alyssa. Joining me now to discuss the tragedy in further detail is journalist Lisa Daftari, joining me from Los Angeles. Lisa, do we know exactly what caused the crash?
You know, it seems like there was a fire, and from what I've heard, because I was out of town, but here in Los Angeles, it was a foggy morning when this crash occurred. They could not contain the fire, or they weren't able to make the emergency landing that they wanted to, and they crashed into a hillside. Obviously, this is incredibly tragic. It's incredibly tragic because, you know, Kobe Bryant was an iconic sports figure, a role model to so many people, especially here in Los Angeles, but I know the reverberations were felt around the world. I have, you know, followers who commented from all over the Middle East, even commenting on how much they looked up to Kobe Bryant and As you said, this wasn't just a tragedy, taking the life of a sports icon, but it was his daughter and the others who were on board, a total of 9 people. And I said to my family yesterday, I said, imagine how excited these other individuals were to be in Kobe Bryant's helicopter. What a ride of a lifetime, or experience of a lifetime, going to a simple teenager's basketball game. That's where he was going to coach and to watch his daughter and the other girls on board play basketball. Just a reminder, I know Kobe Bryant had such a legacy. He left behind such a legacy, and he was so incredible at the game of basketball. But what I kept saying yesterday is that his life had just begun, where at least the meaningful, impactful part of his life, where he would take the success, the fame, the money, the resources that he had to truly make a difference in the lives of young people, in the lives of upcoming athletes, in the lives of inner city children who don't have the opportunities. And that's why this is so tragic. I know so many people, there's so many perspectives, I should say, and so many people mourn this in different ways, looking at it as a parent losing a child and thinking of Kobe's wife losing his daughter, or looking at an entire family wiped out, looking at it as a sports icon whose life was cut short. I mean, so many memories that people here, I know in Los Angeles, have of the Lakers, and Kobe was the Lakers, and is the Lakers, I should say. I just heard that the game between the Clippers and the Lakers that was supposed to take place has now been postponed out of respect for the Los Angeles teams, out of respect for the Los Angeles community. And I know that this is going to take a while. I think so many people had a very difficult time even absorbing the news. That was quite a tragic day here, and they continue to mourn him as crowds gather at Staples Center in downtown Los Angeles, and people talk about the legacy that he left behind.
Yeah, I had the chance to see Kobe Bryant take on the Memphis Grizz like 17, 18 years ago. He scored 63 points that game at Staples Center. I was there to see it. It was an incredible achievement, and yeah, may he rest in peace. He was just an incredible basketball player and an icon, like you said, in the basketball community. Lisa, China is now counting 2,700 cases, including over 80 deaths from the coronavirus. We've had 2 confirmed cases here in Canada and Toronto, and now you've had 5 confirmed cases in the United States. Will this become another SARS?
Yeah, this is quite scary, and it's making its impact everywhere because the symptoms are so silent, and it seems like people are losing their lives. 80 people lost their lives in the community in which it originated. It seems like it came from livestock. That's where the virus originated. But again, people have already traveled out of Wuhan, the Chinese province where this began. And it's going to take a while before this can be contained. Again, where we spoke about this last time, you and Hal, about how whenever there's an when airplanes are available, diseases will spread, and they will spread quickly to different continents. And here in the United States, they're trying their best to contain the individuals who have been flagged for the virus. And I know in Canada you have the same issue, but the goal now is to sequester those who are infected, to not allow them to travel, to check people at airports, to do our due diligence to stop this disease from spreading any further.
Turkey is searching for more people from the recent devastating earthquake which killed 38 people, Lisa. Turkey's Erdogan hits back at criticism that his country is not earthquake ready.
Well, that's what it appears to be. This was in eastern Turkey, where the infrastructure perhaps is not as prepared for this type of an earthquake. It was a very strong earthquake. I believe it was a 6.8 magnitude, which is quite a significant tremor. And when you have that kind of destruction, you have a high casualty number, and this is what happened here. We're almost at 40 people, and the search continues for many that are missing. So of course that number will climb, and of course Erdogan is receiving the criticism that when you have money to pour into regional activities and be involved in Libya and Syria, and to be involved in the deaths of Kurdish people, and to make that your priority, well, you have to take care of your own civilians back at home, and perhaps have infrastructures that won't lend themselves to deaths the way that this earthquake did. So he is facing that criticism for that reason. But of course, our prayers, our thoughts are with the people of Turkey, those communities and those families that were affected by the earthquake, and we hope that people can be found alive and be connected with their families.
The U.S. Embassy dining hall in Baghdad was hit by a rocket. Officials say there were no immediate reports of injuries, so that's the good news.
Yes, the good news. But, as soon as this news broke, I think everyone thought the same thing. Is this another attack from the Iranian government? Will this lead to war, as everyone is worried about? And on the edge of our seats here, thinking, will this be the strike that leads to war, as we talked about a couple weeks ago with the exchange of missile fire between the Iranian government and the United States? This is probably more of what they're saying is a militia. Now, who that militia is who it's backed by. Is it an Iraqi militia? Is it an Iranian-backed militia? Most probably the latter, but we have not seen any confirmation or any claims from the Iranian government thus far about this attack. But, this is yet again another attack on U.S. assets in the region and in Iraq in particular. In the backdrop of Iraqi protests that began up again October 1st, that have claimed the lives of 500 protesters thus far. What are the Iraqi people saying? They're saying, we want our voices to count. We want the U.S. out. We want the Iranian government out. We want free and fair elections that represent us all. And you have to imagine, ever since the toppling of Saddam Hussein and his Sunni majority government, it has been a Shiite majority government, of course, led by the Iranian regime and its representatives in that country. So the Iraqi people are saying, look, we've had this turmoil, we've had the instability, but now let it count for something and let us have our own say and our own vote as to who governs us. And in the midst of all this turmoil, who wins? Well, the insurgencies win. This is how terror groups like ISIS, like Al-Qaeda, like the Iranian government's tentacles grow and prosper in this uncertainty, in these political vacuums that are created all over the Middle East. And when the U.S. and the allies pull out and don't have a presence on the ground, these vacuums are allowed to grow further. So the question always becomes, how involved does the West want to be in these instances? Do we want to stay involved? Do we want to help create that stability? Or is it for the people of the country to create that stability, which proves very difficult and challenging, of course. And that's why we have so many decades of instability in Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and Libya, and the list goes on. But again, that question of are we helping, are we hurting, and how much of our own assets and blood and treasure can we leave in these places with no positive results. So, again, 500 lives have already been claimed. It doesn't look like those protesters are backing down anytime soon. In the middle of all this, we have another attack on the U.S. Embassy.
Yeah, Voice of America is reporting that Iraq forces are using live rounds on demonstrators, Lisa.
Yes, it looks like they want this to end. And, if they take a page out of the Iranian regime's handbook, it's to go hard against those protesters, to create, a symbolic attack so that, you don't want the number of casualties to be too high because you get more protesters to come out. But at the same time, you want the protesters to be scared enough to stay home and not come out. So that's exactly what we're seeing with the casualty number being very high for protests that have only been going on for a couple of months and sporadically. They haven't been as intense every day as we have seen in other places like Iran or like Lebanon. But again, those protesters, they have a case to be made and they want the world to hear it.
U.S. President Donald Trump was asked if he's willing to lift sanctions on Iran, to which he replied, "No, thank you."
He says it like it is, right? Look, the U.S. has had an interesting role in Iranian foreign affairs. And, if you look back at the Obama era, where so much money and billions of dollars were released to the Iranian regime, a contract and a nuclear deal was signed to which, there's no mention of human rights abuses, no mention of money poured into terrorism, no mention of beating down protesters, no mention of incarcerating Western citizens, etc. and still there's reports of an ongoing weapons program. Now you have the Trump administration here in the United States. He was a candidate who ran his entire presidential campaign on pulling out and shredding that Iran nuclear deal, and that's exactly what he did. In May of 2018, he pulled right out of that deal. He said, you know, we'd rather have no deal than a bad deal, and that's exactly what happened. And now we have an exchange of, you know, muscle flexing and chest thumping, and the Iranians are pushing the Europeans to get back into a deal. They at the same time want a nuclear program for themselves, and also want a nuclear deal that they're not going to follow. So, you know, this is business as usual for Tehran's regime, and for that reason, President Trump says that the sanctions will remain, and that is the only non-aggressive economic punishment that the West can apply to the Iranian regime, which unfortunately the sanctions are passed down to the people, and President Trump has acknowledged that. He supports the people, he supports the protests, he supports the people of Iran, but the only way to truly punish and to create a situation where the Iranians will come to the table in a way that they will compromise on their nuclear program is to punish them with sanctions that are directly, hopefully, directly applied to the people, to the weapons programs, to the technology, to all the sectors that are important to the regime itself.
U.S. President Trump recently had a meeting with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israeli opposition leader Benny Gantz as he's preparing to release a long-delayed Middle East plan. Tell me more about that.
This is the first time that we're going to hear specifics about the deal that the Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas has rejected wholesalely without even knowing any details. So, you know, already we have a false start because we're not even dealing with a partner who wants to negotiate regardless of the details of that negotiation. But what I'm told by sources inside the White House is that this is the most detailed deal we have ever heard. They've been working on it for 3 years now. This has been spearheaded by a couple of people, but mainly the president's son-in-law and advisor, Jared Kushner. And the deal was preemptively announced as an economic deal in Bahrain months ago, when an economic incentive was presented to the Palestinian people that billions of dollars would be pushed into their economy in the form of jobs and infrastructure and tourism, to which, again, the Palestinian authorities said no way. And now we will hear more of the political aspects of that deal, meaning a map, meaning lines, meaning perhaps a two-state solution, or maybe even more sovereignty for the Palestinian people than we have seen in the past. But again, we need a committed partner in peace in order to do this. And President Trump announced today, there was a press release that was released right after the meeting between Bibi and President Trump, saying that the secret or the recipe to peace in the Middle East will be through this deal between the Palestinians and Israelis. And that is why this White House and this president has been so set on presenting a deal that will perhaps be palatable by both sides. So we shall see the reaction from the Israeli side, from the Palestinian side, and see if we can move forward with this deal.
Lisa, we only have a few short moments left here, but in Mali, militants on motorbikes killed 20 troops. 20 Mali soldiers were attacked at an army camp by gunmen.
Yes, it's not talked about much in the mainstream media, but you have ISIS and Al-Qaeda both on the ground in Mali, and you have casualties like this happening every single day in the form of terror attacks on civilians. And these were actually policemen that died in this attack. But we've reported before at the Foreign Desk on attacks on civilians in Mali every single day. There are attacks in the African continent that are not talked about. When we talk about terrorism, we mainly focus on the Middle East, perhaps North Africa, but deep into the African continent. They have made their way through, and they have created these terror cells. And you know, there has to be more of a focus on the presence of these terror organizations in that continent, because when they gain that momentum, when they gain that political clout, that is when they set up these headquarters and are able to launch attacks all over the world just from these terror cells. So very important story to follow, an important place to follow with regards to the growth of ISIS and Al-Qaeda both.
Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Thanks so much, Lisa.
My pleasure.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless. Thanks again for watching.